Alright, Nordcrafters and Nordcrafties, I can't call you Gentlefish anymore because if I do so, Lucas will disown me. So, this is going to be a short and sweet video. What we're doing today is we are going to implement... Hold on, I think I'm looking at the wrong thing. There we go. I'm recording, right? Yeah, okay. We're going to be implementing the Supabase SDK. This is going to be very crucial. This is going to be a very critical tutorial because it's going to be like maybe a mini series. We'll see. But you're going to have to make sure that you have done this step if you're going to be part of it. So, let's get into adding the Supabase SDK into Nordcraft. So, before we begin, we're going to be adding two things. We're going to be adding our Supabase URL and our public key as formulas here in Nordcraft if you haven't done so already. So I haven't done so I'm going to go ahead and create two formulas. This first one's going to be Supabase URL for me. Then I'm going to go copy that and paste it in here. Then I'm going to make another one, Supabase non-key, like that, and do the exact same process. So go ahead and do that for yours, and then let's continue. So once you have those, we're now going to create a custom action to load the Supabase JavaScript SDK into Nordcraft. So to do that, we're going to create a custom action here. So we're going to go to actions, we're going to press the plus, and we're going to call it whatever you want. I'm going to name it Supabase _init. Create that. And now, yes, sadly, we're going to have to be dealing with a little bit of code. So for this, what I like to do, and you technically don't have to do this, I just find this to be the way I prefer to do it, is we're going to add two arguments for that URL and the key that we just created. You can name these whatever you want as long as you know what they are. And then I'm just going to say that I want both of them here. And if I don't have them, I want to return a error. Something like that. Okay. So now we're going to have to get the SDK into Nordcraft. Let's go ahead and do a try catch here. And here we're going to say const. What we can do really is create client, and then I'm going to go ahead and just go get this link that I already have. We're going to say equals await import. There we go. Okay. So what we're about to do here is we're going to get create client from the Supabase JavaScript SDK. So if I just search that up real quick. Zoom out a little bit. Where's that at? Oh, I just saw it. So we're essentially doing this part right here, because the create client is what we need to pass the URL and the key to be able to use Supabase. Oh, just like this right here. Just like that. So create client and then the URL and then your key. And if you want, this code will be in the description. So, sorry, you're going to see this error here. Await is only valid in async functions. So we're going to come up here to function. We're going to say async right there. Sorry about that. So once we have that, we can go ahead and say that const Supabase is going to equal create client, and we're going to pass that URL and the public key. Now come over here to events, and we're going to create an event called Supabase, and then back over here we're going to go ahead and trigger that event. Oops. Supabase, and then we want to pass Supabase. So what's going to happen here is that once Supabase is created, is going to trigger the Supabase event right here, in which we are going to pass the Supabase variable so that we can use it outside of this custom action and in other places. Okay, and in this catch part right here, you can just go ahead and say like console error, and there, I'll do backticks, there was an error, and then log whatever your error message is, something like that. Okay, now here is a very important part. We're going to be providing this Supabase variable via context to other actions or wherever it may need to be used. So to do that, you have to have some sort of provider, because remember, context has to be passed down. So what that means is, for example, I have a app provider here that wraps every single page of the application. So I would probably put it somewhere here, or if I create a specific Supabase provider, which I am going to do for this video, but you just have to make sure that wherever you want to use it, it has to be a child of the provider in order to get access to that variable. So I'm going to create a new component. I'm going to call it Supabase underscore provider. You can name it whatever you want. You don't even have to use this. You could put it on whatever wraps your current application. I'm just going to pass a slot in here. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say on load. Actually, you know what? Let's create this. Is that right? Yeah. On load, we want to go ahead and trigger that Supabase init custom action that we created. And we're going to go ahead and pass those two formulas as the URL and the public key right here. So now here is that event that we created for Supabase that's going to give us back Supabase so that we can add it as context here in Nordcraft. So let's go ahead and create a variable called Supabase, and then we're going to need a formula. You can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name it Supabase, in which is going to be linked to that Supabase variable. And a very important part is we want to expose in context. As you can see, it says access this context in child components. So we're going to select that. Now, back at the onload, on the Supabase event, which is going to give us Supabase, we want to set the variable we just created, just like so. Don't worry if you see this. You see this if we didn't add specific example outputs here. Like I'll just add a space and that'll disappear. I was in the Supabase provider. There we go. So you see the Supabase event. We want to set whatever we get from that event, which is going to be Supabase, to the Supabase variable. And then after that, well, there's no after that. That's pretty much it, actually. Because now we'll be able to get it, as you can see here, in that function. Here's all the Supabase properties right there. And that's all you need to get Supabase into Nordcraft. But you have to remember that this has to wrap whatever it is that's trying to use it. So for example, let's go ahead and we'll create a Supabase example component or something like that. Let's go ahead and let's create another action. Supabase. I did the pagination earlier, so let's do that. That'll be a good test. We get pagination or something like that, in which this is going to be a async function, and we're going to have to pass Supabase into here. So we're going to say Supabase, just like so. Okay, now how do we get Supabase in here? Well, let's go back to the example component. Here we're going to go to context. We're going to press the plus If you have multiple, you're going to see this component drop down field. Go ahead and find that provider where you added the Supabase context, which is for me was the Supabase provider, and we're going to subscribe to that formula that should give us Supabase. Then now, in this example component, let's go ahead and on load, we will do that new Supabase custom action that we created for get pagination, in which we have to pass in Supabase, which we can just do like so because we are subscribing to that formula from the provider. So that should give us Supabase and then pass it into this get pagination custom action. Let me go back there and let's just go ahead and log whatever Supabase is. And then I will just put this, say, we'll go to the let's go to the home page. And we'll just add the example component like that. So when we load the home page, it should console log the Supabase instance. So let's go ahead and I will go ahead and open the expect element. And here you're going to see we have null. Now why do we have null? If you can't see that, let me zoom in a little bit. The reason we have null is, like I said earlier, for anything that wants to use the Supabase variable that we passed via the formula, it has to be a child of that provider. So what we can do is say here, we can go ahead and wrap this with that Supabase provider. So now here's the provider and here's what's trying to use the provider. You can see that it is a child of the Supabase provider. That's what it has to be. It has to be a component child of the provider. So now if we come back and refresh, we might get null, but it's not because it's not working. It's because we actually have to come into here, and sometimes it's not ready on load. So let's go ahead and create a workflow really quickly, and you can call it pagination or something like that. And what we want to say, we have a switch. Am I zoomed in or is this just so big? And in this switch, we're going to check for Supabase. So if it's null, this won't run. So we're going to say now here's where we want to do that get pagination and pass in Supabase. Otherwise, if we don't have Supabase yet, you might just want to come over here, do a sleep. Now this delay in milliseconds you can change to whatever you want. It depends on how long it might take. You can have it be 100 or whatever, 50. For this example, I'm going to be using 500. And then on the tick, we want to trigger this same workflow again. We're pressed done there, and then on load, instead of doing this now, we're just going to do the pagination workflow. So what's going to happen? So what's going to happen here is that Supabase might not be ready by the time this component loads, so it'll enter the switch. If it sees Supabase is not ready, it's going to go over here to the else. It's going to sleep for 500 milliseconds and then run this again. And then typically after the first run, it'll run again, and then by this time it should be ready. So then it'll go over here and then trigger the pagination. So we can see now if we do that, you see now we have Supabase here. And we can see how many times it ran. If we just come over here and I'll put it up here and log this really quickly. Supabase not ready, retrying. We try this again. You see we get Supabase not ready, retrying, and then it ran again, and now we actually have Supabase. And now here you could use Supabase how you normally would. So in that get pagination custom action, I can say we'll go get those items that we use for pagination, which would be const data error equals await Supabase from pagination select. I'll do a limit. Let's do 15, and then let's console log the data. So now if we come back over, oh, I guess I closed it, and we check the console, you will see that first Supabase wasn't ready, retrying, and now after it ran again, we then got the items from pagination, just like we would just using the Supabase SDK normally. And that's how we get Supabase into Nordcraft. Now make sure that you do follow this step, because from here we are going to get into things like Realtime, so you have to really make sure that you understand everything that's going on here, and if you don't, feel free to ask questions. I'll be happy to answer them, and with that I'll leave you, and we'll see you guys in the next video.